Hi, I'm Justin Lokitz, and this is the Design Shift Podcast, your weekly guide to mastering the leap from creative expert to confident design leader, packed with actionable insights, proven strategies, and real world wisdom. In this episode, I chatted with Elizabeth Glenewinkel and Mario Ruiz, two well known dyed in the wool design and innovation leaders, about their careers, strategy, and innovation, and how the jobs to be done framework can be used as a designer's bridge to AI. Keep listening to learn how to reclaim your agency in an increasingly agentic world. And remember to subscribe to the show and the Design Shift newsletter if you enjoy the episode. Okay, well, here we are again with Design Shift, and I'm super delighted to introduce two distinguished voices in design and innovation to our Design Shift community. Elizabeth Glenewinkel and Mario Ruiz, both of whom I've worked with and I really love, and I've seen a lot of their work, and it's pretty incredible. We'll start with Elizabeth. She's a human-centered innovation leader with decades of experience at Gravity Tank and Salesforce, where she scaled research and innovation programs globally. She also co-founded California College of the Arts Leading by Design Executive Program, and she teaches at CCA's Design MBA program, but also at UC Berkeley. Her focus today is helping professionals build design skills for an AI-driven world. And she also works quite a bit with Mario Ruiz, who is a digital transformation expert with also decades of experience leading everything from branding strategy to design ops to platform strategy and innovation across tons of industries. He works at the intersection of design and tech and strategy and really aligns teams and leaders to drive impact at scale across global markets. One of the reasons I'm so excited to speak with both of these awesome design leaders is because they bring a wealth of knowledge and experience, not only to this community, but also they have this unique perspective on human-centered innovation and especially AI, which is really inspiring to say the least. So with that, that's a long intro. I'm going to hand it to both of you, and I'd love for you to tell us a little about yourself, your journey as research and design leaders, and maybe we'll start with Elizabeth. Go for it.
Well, thank you for the lovely introduction and for having me today. And it's great to be with so many familiar faces. Mario and I go way back, and you'll hear more about that.
Yeah,
I
cool.
think my journey started with Institute of Design at IIT. I had an undergraduate degree in advertising and did it for about a year and realized pretty quickly it was very fun to study advertising, but less fun to practice, especially when it's not your superpower. So I was looking
Right.
for an MBA program or a design program and landed at ID. And that led me to Meta Design, which at the time was one of the world's largest graphic design firms, headquartered in Berlin. And they luckily had an outpost in San Francisco. So joined there and managed to surf through the first internet crash and then ended up doing consulting work. And so that's where I reconnected with Gravity Tank, which was founded by one of my professors at ID, and really started, doing more research focused work. And from there, after many other little journeys, which are pivots and different experiences, which I won't go into, landed at Salesforce, which acquired Gravity Tank about 10 years ago. And Mario had a key role in that. So I'll let him share that part of the story. But
Okay, I'm interested
yes,
in that
sir,
one.
he
Yeah.
was key to that. One of my big breaks. And at Salesforce, I led the West Coast practice of our Ignite team. Our research for the West Coast practice of Ignite was an internal innovation agency at Salesforce, did that for 4 years, jumped over to product, where I led research and insights for our industry's clouds, which is, I think, still continues to be one of the fastest growing parts of Salesforce's business, and was able to grow a team from 2 researchers to 24, spanning the United States and India, which was an incredible experience. I learned so much. While I was at Salesforce and Gravity Tank, I was teaching at CCA. I was teaching at Haas, as you said, at Cal. And I was also doing workshops at Salesforce. So on business storytelling, cultivating a culture of critique, which I think more industries should embrace, how to co-create with your customers. And that really led me to think, I that's what I want to do. I really want to focus all my time on teaching. So I retired from Salesforce at the end of December and am now focused on teaching and really bringing together, or really, focusing on my AI skills, um,
Hmm.
and really experimenting, exploring with that. So it's an incredible time to be teaching. It's challenging, it's exciting, and it's a whole new world. So that's a bit about me.
Oh, I love that. And I'm also excited to talk about the co-creation part, both with people and AI, but we will get there. I'll hold back for a little bit because I'd also love to hear, Mario, tell me your story as well, and your path, and maybe flavor in like your path to, bringing in Gravity Tank and then working with Elizabeth.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks, Justin, again for the opportunity, and it's really awesome to do this with Elizabeth as well. We have really interesting intersection points just throughout our career. I did the undergraduate program at Stanford, the product design program, and so my exposure to design and human-centered design really came from people like David Kelly and Dave Patnaik, who's a Jump Associates, and really frames sort of the early thinking on human-centered design by taking classes like need finding and doing research. I mean, we one of our class projects was riding along with EMTs and in their ambulance
Oh, wow.
and
Yeah.
as an undergraduate students, and just getting like really direct qualitative experience there. I joined HP after college, and it was an interesting time in their journey. They had acquired Compaq, and design really was playing a big role there because we had at HP different products. We needed to merge those products. We needed one common design language. There was a lot of teams just working on their own, doing what was we human factors work, which was actually UI design. It just didn't have a term for it. So that was a really interesting experience in terms of developing a design language and a design system for HP's products. Understanding a little bit of what that took, also just from a leadership perspective, to have a strong design chief and really positioning design from a business perspective to allow us to do those. Um, Coincidentally, I think Elizabeth and I, coincided there with some of the work she was doing for HP as well. Um, and one of my breaks, I think, was through that experience at HP is being able to go to the Institute of Design, and that's I think one of the intersection points that Elizabeth and I have, and really just rewiring my brain and my thinking on early stage design, design research, design planning, really connecting design into business and business strategy. And it's something
Mm.
that, has sort of carried me through the rest of my career. From HP, I consulted a little bit for companies like Intuit and had a chance to work in Telefonica in Spain. I joined Salesforce when it was about 6,000 people back in 2011, I would say.
Yeah.
Really small but growing. And I joined as a product designer, so I was working on the first mobile experiences there. So at the time, a lot of the companies were switching from um, browser-based experiences or software that you had to download to mobile experiences, and then from there joined an Ignite team. The Ignite team at the time was about 10 people
Mm.
strong and emerging and growing, and had a chance to really, I think for me that was a merger of all the things that I had studied and done and been interested in my career, to get to that point and practice design at that level. It was my out of the shire moment, I would say, because I was now in a group that was with non-designers and yet still with that
Right.
ethos of having design as a value. One of the I think interesting things in that journey was we needed to scale and we needed to grow and we needed to grow the team, by a sizable amount, and that's where the acquisition of Gravity Tank came in. It was going to be much easier to acquire a company versus being able to hire that many people that quickly.
Right.
We had some work prior to that. Elizabeth and I actually worked with a financial services firm, brought Gravity Tank in to do some research, and so there was already some of that exposure into the work that Gravity Tank could do, and long story short, they came on, and it was a great community that of like minds, and really I think that's what elevated that team in terms of methodology and craft and thinking about design. Um, and from there, it was a little bit of a rocket ship experience. I think with the growth that was happening at Salesforce, I was able to uh, relocate and live and work in places like Tokyo and Sydney and Mexico City to scale those practices. After that role, I built up an innovation team to about 21 people under the CIO organization, and that was focused on internal
Also
innovation.
at Salesforce?
Also at Salesforce, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and after that, I have left Salesforce in 2020 and have been
Mhm.
independently consulting and carrying much of what I was doing with customers into the independent consulting and working on business transformation and helping with digital transformation efforts. So that's a little bit about my career and the story and the journey so far.
I, I love it. And, yeah, and I love that intersection. Was just starting my own design agency consulting firm at about the same time that Gravity Tank was being acquired by Salesforce, and as I was doing my landscape, my landscape research, like who are the competitors, based in San Francisco, and Gravity Tank, and then not the opposite of a Thanos' snap, I suppose. It's like the bigger one where things actually grow. Here, Salesforce gobbled it up. It's like, oh shit, okay, there's something here. I should
Yeah.
grow mine really fast and see what happens. That didn't happen for my firm, but I'd always followed along. I'd love to know a little bit, and from both of you, and we'll just jump right in to what does the insights team, or maybe does or did it do at Salesforce, and what made it really special? I hear you both talking about research and design and strategy, right, which also means business. What made it special? What are those inflection points, and really, what would someone want to know about the importance of that, not just about the insights team and what Salesforce did or does with the insights team, but what makes those sort of intersections so important?
I'll say one example that I would talk about, and we
Yeah.
definitely brought this from Gravity Tank to Ignite, but like you said,
Hmm.
Mario, those that sensibility, those mindsets were already there. It was just small, right? And so Gravity Tank was able to scale it. But at Gravity Tank, which you also call GT, we would say
Hmm.
researchers are the advocates for the user, designers are the advocates for the solution, and strategists are the advocates for the business. And we always kept all three of those disciplines together throughout the whole project. So that was the team, and the team would flex. So sometimes the designers would do research, and sometimes everyone did research together. It started to kind of start to change trajectory a little bit when it got into further along in the project, designers really focusing on design,
Hmm.
business really focusing on the strategy. But the fact that the team was dedicated and not just kind of handoffs, and the fact that all three disciplines had equal weight, I think was really critical. So that's what I would say. Mario, I
Yeah.
don't know what you would add to that.
Yeah, I think the big shift that I noticed was all of a sudden there was just structure, and I think there was a
Mm.
lot of desire, a lot of motivation, to be innovative, to really challenge, and to be provocative. But everyone sort of had their own way of doing that, and I think when Gravity Tank joined, then it just provided more structure in how to uh, be more specific and focused on certain methods, right? Whether it was research, whether it was running a
Yeah.
workshop, the role of strategy, the role of design, um, the role of research. And so I think from a way to scale the team and to say, yes, we can handle consistently and have a consistent experience for Salesforce's customers at the time, that was really important. I think for customers, I would say they were experiencing something new. They were
Mm.
experiencing a different way of working that was really productive. but tangible and concrete, and you could prototype and you could see and you could experience. And it was all also with the context of their business and with a context of what is mutually beneficial between Salesforce and the customer. But I think it was a really engaging experience for customers to experience something like that. So that's kind of the two sides, what customers felt,
Yeah.
and then also just as a team, how we were able to formalize it and structure it and scale it up.
Can I add one thing too? Like, you're right, we brought a ton of structure in because we were a lot of teachers at Gravity Tank and always just really
Right.
focusing on, like, how do we teach this method to our customers and whatever, but a really strong process. But I think the thing that Salesforce did to Gravity Tank, which was really incredibly helpful, was Salesforce changes and moves really quickly. And so when I would
Yeah.
be interviewing people, I would say, you have to be ready to be like full on, this is the plan, this is what we're doing. Okay, we're doing this now. It's just like our motto on my last team was never a dull moment. And so that
Yeah.
ability to like really shift and really change either based on what Salesforce was doing or what the customer needed, all married into that process. I
Mhm.
think that was the secret sauce, the combination of those two.
I, that leads to me my next question, which is, the teaching part. And so, I think we've all been part of these co-creative sessions, long engagements with these big companies, working for big companies. I actually happen to have worked for another group called Insight at Oracle in 2005. It was a little bit more like a wolf in sheep's clothing. You go in there and it was a bunch of, we pull the Oracle bus up and a bunch of us technologists would get out and lead them down the path of more Oracle. I get a sense that that is not exactly the case with the Salesforce Insights team, because what I'm hearing you say is it was real collaboration with customers. There was some teaching, but also moving fast, prototyping. How did you measure impact? Not only for Salesforce, which I suppose might be for more licenses and consulting, whatever, and maybe it's something else. But how did customers measure impact, or how did you help them measure impact on the other side of that?
Elizabeth, you
No, go ahead. Go ahead and
know?
start. I have some thoughts, but I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, I think my perspective was, customers were the customers that were working with us were dealing with a lot of change.
Mm,
These weren't small problems that they were trying to tackle, and so it was how do you take someone along this journey that's going to continue after we're done with our part, but how do you frame it and set it up, but where you're not going from 0 to 60 miles an hour right away. So the teaching piece comes in
mm,
because you're sort of guiding through the different phases of work and why it's important, and also moving quickly. But there's that education piece, of like, why are we doing this? Because at the beginning it may not make a lot of sense, but as you get to having something more tangible and more clarity, then the journey starts to make a little bit more sense. But there's those outcomes of, yes, it grows the business, it increases revenue for a
mhm,
company like Salesforce. The sales teams are happy. But I think qualitatively for the customers that we're addressing the problem that they have, we're preparing them for an objective that they need to meet, whether it's dealing with, I don't know, regulation, and they're more prepared for that, and that
mm,
there's a general ownership of the work, and there's excitement among the executive teams, and with that, the people that we're working with as well. So I think you get a sense of that feeling of we're excited, we're ready to take this challenge on, we're
mm,
in a way better prepared, because we thought through the whys behind things, and it's evidence based, and as much as we could incorporate, things like user research and all of that. So I think those are some of the measures that we would look at from a qualitative standpoint in terms of the customer, experience at the end.
yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we always talked about account value, ACV, like where were we
Yeah,
able to influence a deal. Um,
right.
so that was very tangible. Another kind of tangible way, I think, was that Salesforce has a very intensive, planning process for the year
Yeah.
where leaders,
Yeah.
talk about these are the things that we are going to accomplish. And so how many times did leaders say, I need an ignite? Because at the end of the day, we were an
Um,
innovation team, but we were also a relationship play, right? We were Salesforce
right.
investing in this customer, and it didn't always have to be an enterprise account. It could be just a really incredible nonprofit, right? That we really believe in. But
Yeah.
there was that of just, how many times are we part of a customer motion? And then there was the opportunity for innovation to come out of it. But I think the interesting about Ignite, which I'm not sure if we made clear, is that we didn't charge for that service, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
we
Yeah.
were quote unquote free, but there is no such thing as
Yeah.
free. So we
Right.
required, and this is why it required so much structure, was
Hmm.
to say that we need a C-suite executive to sponsor this. We need a
Hmm.
dedicated project manager. We need access to, X, Y, and Z. And what was interesting about that is that at any point the customer could back out, right? You can do that in real world too, right? Just, stop the project. But we had to really make this valuable for them to spend their time and to see value. But we also, this was the beauty of this program, we could say no to a customer, to like we're or to even to a colleague if they would say we want to unite,
Yeah.
and we'd say this
Yeah.
customer isn't ready or this isn't the right problem. And so it made it more rare and exclusive, which I think also helped getting off a little bit of the metrics, but just a little bit more about how the program was structured.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, so it's both a sales tool, but also you're really helping the customer on the other side. And what I'm hearing perhaps is there are metrics that are tied to that work, and maybe there, for Salesforce, there's a specific metric, uh, but for the whole thing, there's perhaps something else. Uh, Obviously, it was an exciting, right? It sounds like you were excited to work together. And Mario, you went on to another innovation group, but you also both left relatively recently. Mario about almost 5 years ago, and Elizabeth within the last few months left Salesforce, and now you're both independent, still working together, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But tell me about that. Why leave? What was your impetus, and a bit about what is it you're doing now, and what are some of the exciting things you're doing now?
I'll let
We'll start
Mario.
with
Oh,
Elizabeth. Go
oh,
for
you
it.
want to go for it? Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
see.
yeah.
Well, I've only been out of Salesforce for almost 5 months, which
5 months. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
so a lot of that time is just not doing as little as possible. But I knew that I knew I wanted to teach, so exploring more teaching
Hmm.
opportunities, and
Right.
instead of waiting and applying for something, um, reached out to Mario, and we had talked Mario a while back about doing something with jobs to be done, and AI, right? Because we both like that framework, we use it in our teaching.
Hmm.
And it was funny, like a year ago when we explored it, it was just like, oh, how could generative AI help us identify what job performers do in a job map,
Hmm.
right? And at the time, you know, that feels like 10, what's that? We're in dog years with the AI life, right? Or you know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
it feels
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
time.
It's 30 years ago in AI
Yeah.
years, but it's really only a
And
year
we were
ago.
just
And
both so
yeah.
busy with work that we, did a couple attempts. And then when I left
Hmm.
Salesforce at the end of December, like, oh, I can really focus on this now. And we revisited it and we realized, like, oh, you can do that with Gen AI in like 5 seconds. Generate a job. Like maybe not
Hmm.
a whole workshop isn't needed. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
obviously, it's hard to not be in the Bay Area. I know this will go beyond the Bay Area, but not be immersed in agents, right? Like AI agents. And
Hmm.
so just thought, okay, where could we push this? And it just made so much sense of designing agents using the jobs to be done framework. That just seemed like, oh, we should do that. And so again, we always have this is something we got from Ignite, which is a test and shape mentality, right? Like let's just do
Yeah.
it. Like let's not talk about it. Let's do it. So we put on a workshop and just we see a lot of opportunity there to do more of that. Mario, I'll let you take it from there, but that's something that I'm very excited about.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
was this for Elizabeth? It was a conversation you had while still at
Yes.
Salesforce. Was it part of your impetus for also leaving and going out on your own and teaching? Was it like, I want to do more of this?
I think so. I mean, I'm very far along in my career. Part of it was I've been thinking about retiring for a while. So
Okay.
it was less,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think that was more the teaching if I'm going to be truly honest, but I know that anything I'm doing going forward has to have AI as part of it. Like that's just a
Yeah.
no-brainer.
Right.
And while you can learn, I mean, I was learning a ton about AI at Salesforce. I was also still very enmeshed in the day to day and Salesforce's
Hmm.
approach to AI. And so leaving gave me an opportunity to look beyond Salesforce and also really, actually just have the time to spend with Mario and think deeply about this in addition to
Yeah.
teaching. So it was a little bit about
Yeah.
more about that.
Nice. Thank you. Sorry, Mario. Yeah. Jump right in.
No, 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 that's okay. I think for me, the consulting work that I've been doing post Salesforce is very much an extension of the work that we were doing with customers at Salesforce. I think the
Hmm.
difference is that I'm much more ingrained into the company and into the culture, and being sort of more in depth. And I think with our work at Salesforce, we could only go so deep, in terms of
I see.
understanding what it's
Yeah.
like really, within a company, just the challenges that they have longer term as well.
Hmm.
Um, but what I started to notice and observe is this framework of jobs to be done that I would leverage, and it was just having pretty significant impact in terms of being a productive, tangible tool. It was a tool that created, and a framework that created a shared language among designers, among product managers, among leaders, engineering. And so it was one of those frameworks that as I was consulting, I would use more and scale out more. And so for me, it was just becoming more and more robust in terms of what I would see, the impact of having it. And I think that just kind of naturally flowed into conversations with Elizabeth and, teaching the experience studio class, where we were like, well,
Hmm.
hey, let's incorporate jobs to be done, and let's have some space for that for the students. And then that evolved into let's do more and let's do more. And so naturally, that kind of came to where we are now with jobs to be done and AI, and having time to actually meaningfully prototype the class. So yeah, so I think I don't know. It's kind of like the universe sort of pulled it in that direction, but we're
Yeah.
getting
Sure.
sort of like little anecdotes from other experiences too. And I know Salesforce was using the framework as well. So
Hmm.
so I think both of us had a good hypothesis of like, okay, this is pretty interesting as a framework.
Hmm.
What can we complement it with, and
Hmm.
sort of what's interesting, in the world of design and AI now, that we can
Hmm.
start to join it up with.
I love that. Yeah, I really truly also having worked both of you, I love that you also continue to work each other and find that intersection together because I think we all gain from that. And I know definitely our younger designers and younger design students newer to the industry, mid-career as well, they get a ton from this and the classes you teach as well. I want to talk more about AI and in a sense, if I think back all the way back when, I left college and in the early 90s at the very beginning, and email was just becoming email. I was still using Pine and everything else, but we saw these inflection points, and I think to myself now, here are all these students, design and otherwise, but here are all these students that are coming up and they're like, they have this, oh shit moment. What's happening? Here's this new thing. It's not the same as what we had perhaps with email. Maybe it's similar to web, maybe, something like that. What's something that either you maybe wished you'd known, coming out as a student, or you would say, or earlier in your career, or perhaps you'd tell students, current students, or even early career, mid-career designers, things they should be watching for now, that, as you're building these jobs to be done, AI workshops, and you're sort of seeing this future and teaching this future, what's something you wished if you were coming out now, that you wish you would known, or you perhaps, talk to and tell early mid-career designers about what they should be watching for?
EG, you want to start this one?
Well, and I think this will, there'll probably be some back and forth on this. I think,
Yeah.
you know, I, you know, at Salesforce, the classes I was teaching internal workshops, some of it was around, how do we bring human-centered skills to an AI-first world, right? And I think the most important one is going to be critical thinking. And there was a great line, I'm not going to quite get it right, of like, it used to be that, these new tools like the internet or Figma or things like that, it'd be like, oh, this is a tool I can use to co-create something. And now we have AI, which can do it for us, right? But we still have to have a critical eye on what it is doing for us. So, for example, I was creating a new curriculum for a class and I mapped it out in, just in Miro. I
Hmm.
never got quite into FigJam. Mapped it out in Miro, started, laying out the classes, and I'm like, okay, I'm now going to put this into AI, and I'm going to say, okay, do this using the double diamond method. Like, if this class were for a double diamond method for this group of students, what would it look like? Okay, use the IDEO, design kit. Okay, use John Kolko. So some of my, design, heroes. And then I was able to get 3 different curriculum, including mine, and then,
Hmm.
decide like, okay, I'm going to take this and that and not that. That doesn't make sense, right? So I have a critical eye based on, 15 years of teaching. And so I think that if you're going to have something do it for you, you still have to be able to evaluate what it's doing and compare and contrast. And testing and shaping is going to be testing and shaping in different, different platforms. Testing and shaping is still going to be getting human feedback on, what's working and what's not working. So it's just again, we're in a brave new world. But I
Yeah.
think that the thinking ability and the ability to debate what is coming back to you, and again, cultivating that culture of critique, either for your collaborators or for AI, is going to be increasingly critical.
Yeah, I think that's profound. And I think of AI as, this is my own perspective, but and it sounds like it's sort of the way you're using it too. It's another collaborator, and you are also critiquing and, not only collaborating, but critically thinking your way through. It's giving me something, and dot dot dot, right? This is the thing I'm looking
Yeah.
for, more than the thing you're giving me, which is how we work with collaborators, and you're having a conversation.
Yeah. And I think, again, this comes just cycles, right? But like looking at
Yeah.
the curriculum, like the curriculum it would develop, I would call it an overstuffed burrito. Like there's no way you're going to cover all that unless it's a lecture based
Mm,
course. Unless I'm
mm,
standing and lecturing for 4 hours a week or ever, then you could cover all this material. But that's not learning. You know what I mean? That's
right.
not experiential learning. And so you do, again, you have to have that critical eye of like, this is a great start, but this is not, I'm not going to take this completely as is, right? I'm going to kick the
Yeah.
tires on it.
Yeah. Makes total sense. How about you, Mario?
I think for me, I think of being really adaptable and
Yeah.
embracing that, and I think never hold anything too dear, even the teams that you're working on and the companies that you're working for. Things are just changing, and they're changing a lot faster
Hmm.
nowadays. I
Hmm.
I remember, circa, I don't know, 2015, 16. It's like, where do we go from here? It's like the Googles are the Googles, the Facebooks are, things are just big now, right? Um, but things will change, right? And I think AI is driving, some of that change in terms of what it will do to fragment, how companies make and build services and products. I mean, it just is, AI tools are a game changer. But I think part of that adaptability also can come with experimentation and being able to
Yeah.
embrace that. and designers have, the skill set to make things. And so that should give designers or anyone sort of design oriented a lot of hope in the sense of how they adapt to what's changing by being able to just jump right in, experiment with the tools, make things, just that ethos of being able to make something and learn from it is a hard muscle to build. And if you're not sort of if that hasn't been taught and if you haven't built up that muscle
Yeah.
over time, it's a little harder to jump in but I think for designers that's what I would say, is just things will change, just embrace it, be ready for it.
Yeah.
When something great ends, it's good, and then there's growth, right? The next step is new growth for
Right.
people.
Right, right. And we've heard in past interviews, I've heard a lot about that adaptability. And also, to Elizabeth's point, like, just being critical about things and being able to critique things for your own as part of that co-creation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that tracks with everything I've been hearing from other design leaders as well. I totally agree. This adaptability now, right? We're talking about AI, and I'd love to talk about this course workshop. I was privileged enough to be in one of your first, if not your very first, pancake prototype of this jobs to be done AI agent workshop. Tell me more about that. I just want to know, what is it that you're doing? What is it about? Who do you think it's for, given that you're just starting it? Yeah, let's go from there. It's a lot.
I'll let Mario, I'll let you take that one. I started off.
Yeah, there's this can go in so many different directions, which is I think also what I'm excited about.
Hmm.
This obviously is inspired by work that I've been doing with enterprises, and again, using jobs to be done to help understand the business jobs to be done across an entire customer life cycle from marketing all the way to customer providing customer service. And so there's a really direct application in combining, jobs to be done to prioritizing and identifying agentic opportunities across that entire life cycle. So for me, that's just a big business value unlock, and that can apply to small companies, that can apply to larger enterprises, and I think it just gives those companies a shared view of what the world is and where to focus. And I hear a lot of executives with AI, especially, say, we don't know where to start. We don't know how big, to go. And
Yeah.
so that can help them really uh, prioritize and be more focused on that. There's also the angle of how do we teach that to designers and how do we prepare
Hmm.
designers to be in those types of environments and advocate for a user-centered practice, right? To inspire more thoughtful, meaningful AI. And so that's giving designers tools and methods to say, like, okay, let's slow this down a little bit. Let's be, a little more methodical on where and why, and then go from there. Then dive deep into the AIP. So I think those worlds are sort of kind of um, uh, merging in a way, and and really inspiring for, like, well, what can we start to put out there that can teach some of these ideas and concepts. And honestly, it's very, I mean, we have to practice our adaptability in this as well, because
Yeah.
even in designing this, we were changing and pivoting along the way. What we started off with wasn't necessarily what we thought we would end up with. So, but such is the case just with when you start putting in AI, things can just go a little faster here, a little slower here, and so that's been our journey too, and where we are with the latest iteration.
Yeah. And big kudos to Mario because he did a lot of the actual agent design in this workshop. This, what, 2.5 hour workshop was really,
Yeah.
kudos to
Yeah.
Mario. And I think I'm going to reiterate in a way what he said, but I think jobs to be done is so great because you're building these agents to do jobs for you, right? Like it's kind of a no
Yeah.
brainer, right? But I
Right.
don't think that companies are always I don't know if they always have the rigor around what is the job map. So here's the high level process, and here are all the jobs below it. And so
Mm-hmm.
what's great about when you take that approach, and again, you can generate these job maps pretty darn quickly, is you can be really surgical. And so instead of saying like, we're going to do product development with AI, you can say, we're going to have an agent who only does, marketing campaign, will create this kind of marketing. It can be like a very small job, micro job. And you can kind of
Mm-hmm.
experiment and do your test and shape with that. So, less risk, more ability to just try something and see. It's not high stakes versus trying to say we're going to do all of this with AI, right? Which I don't think is the right approach for any company. I don't care, what size you are, unless you can, pivot and move quickly, right, and make changes quickly. So I think that again, those job maps are really useful in being again very surgical and just trying something and experimenting with very low stakes, but in a way that's
Yeah.
still human centered because job performers are still humans, right?
Mhm.
But then it's also agent centered because it's like, what do I need this agent? What am I hiring this agent to do? So.
Yeah. And I think that to me, when I sat in there, that was the light bulb moment for me was, and I mentioned it a bunch of times, and you're probably like, Justin, it's enough already. But I'll say it again anyways, which is what I feel what you're showing with jobs to be done and AI agents are a few things. One is you are giving agency back to designers, right? Here we are, and again, going back to what should, up and coming, early career, mid career designers, what should they be thinking, doing? You said being critical and critical thinkers and also adaptable. And this feels like this is one of those other places which, hey, what do I really love to do? What do I like to do? What am I really good at? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to learn? Which I know, Elizabeth, also for you, you also went into this to learn more about AI. We talked a bit about that. And then with a job map, to your point, it becomes so practical and even tactical as designers then working with a company and showing up and sort of perhaps showing even our strategic capabilities and muscles. Hey, sure, bring in AI, but that's not the answer. That's not the whole answer. You'll probably spend too much money if you think that's the whole answer. The whole answer is I've got coworkers that are human and I've got coworkers that are perhaps AI, and we work together, and here are the things I'm really good at and you probably should keep paying me for. And in fact, if you could take some of these things off my plate, I could do more of these. And the things you take off my plate, perhaps those are, smaller agent-based jobs. And I really felt like
Yeah.
when I saw that, that's like, oh, this is our in. This is as designers, as strategists, product folks as well, right? That seems to be our in something like this. Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's my diatribe on that, and it feels like that was very intentional as you were building this as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see you, nodding your head.
I think and I can probably speak for Elizabeth on this. We've always sort of shared this idea of moving design as far upstream as possible
Yeah.
in any sort of development cycle. And so I think this gives a way for designers to not just be like, hey, build this agent and go, but to ask those questions of like where and why and what are the outcomes that we're expecting, and it starts to
Hmm.
broaden their skill set, but also moves them into a place where they're shaping the strategy and they're helping to apply critical thinking on where a business should focus. I mean, there's always going to be finite resources and
Right.
money, and so you just got to be smart about what decisions you're making.
Right. Right. Um, I've read a bit about this as well, and for better or worse, I'm a bit of a techno optimist. Here we are in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Eventually, you can't help but be that, which is fortunate, unfortunate, whatever. Um, I've also read, in that I've read quite a bit of that, that things like this, especially working in the way you're saying, which is why I think it's so important, that you've married these two frameworks jobs to be done and agentic workflows, is that the more we understand them, the more we bring these on, in fact, the better we're able to scale. In fact, we often end up hiring companies end up hiring more engineers and designers because like, oh, it's not a near linear path anymore. I get a designer and I get, a designer's extra work. Most companies know I bring in a designer and I get maybe 80% more work, than from the last designer I brought in because there's all the meetings and onboarding and everything else. And what we're seeing now is with designers and engineers for sure, researchers I think probably true as well. You bring on one, you're using agentic workflows, and they're now part of your team, and there's sometimes 10x work you're getting out of everyone, right? There's a real value you're creating that perhaps is even more than the one designer or the one engineer you're bringing on.
Yep.
How do you both stay abreast of what's going on, and what would you recommend designers certainly do to stay abreast of all of these new developments in AI and other technologies and frameworks and things like that?
I think it depends on how you want to learn or how you best learn. So I would start with that. It might be
Hmm.
taking a class. There's a ton of them, and I think that you would want to do due diligence on them and make sure that, like, I attended a webinar. It was a great one, but it was very basic, right? And I was just making
Yeah.
sure that I was on top of, the basic concepts. And so you just have to say, like, where am I in my AI journey? What do I need? And is this the right course? And does it fit my lifestyle to do like kind of more of intensive? But there's plenty that you can just do for, free. There's no such thing as free. It'll take
Mhm.
your time. And do you want to do short bursts or do you want to just do a deep dive? I will say that teaching a workshop will force you. So if you
Yeah.
have a high tolerance for risk and for for experimentation, then I would say give yourself I'm going to go into my company and I'm going to give a workshop on X, right? Low stakes.
Love that.
No one's paying for it, but they're showing up, and then you're testing and
Mhm.
shaping what you're doing, and try and do it 3 times so that you are learning from each one. So I'd say I think the thing is there's no dearth of content out there to learn, right? There's no dearth of
Yeah.
free courses, paid paid intensives, talks, articles, and and then just make sure that you're having time to reflect on it. Oh, sorry. And Google Notebook is amazing, right? If you haven't used Google
Oh yeah.
Notebook, you could
Yeah.
bring there was a I was meeting with an OG designer, Hugh Deverly, and and he's written a lot, and so I brought 5 of
Mhm.
his articles into Google Notebook and had it create a podcast, right? And so on my 20-minute drives, I could listen and learn about Hugh, and I still want to go and read and do certain things, but it's just a nice overview. So I definitely recommend Google Podcast if you want to pull a lot of articles or things in.
That's a good one. I probably could have used that for this interview. So yeah, thanks. Well, maybe we'll do this again, and I'll try it another way. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
How about you, Mario? Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
How should people stay abreast of what's happening in the technology and in the world and strategy and so forth?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's such an exciting time, and so I'm kind of like in multiple sort of like areas, trying to learn as much as possible. I mean, I think right now
Hmm.
LinkedIn is actually a good resource because a lot of
Hmm.
experimentation is happening, and so
Yeah.
find, curate your design leaders who are or heads of product who are just, my team is just experimenting and prototyping using these tools. This is what we think, and it will change, but it at least is starting to give you some idea of what are some of the tools that are creating value and people are experimenting with. Um, I think at a macro level, I'll follow just podcasts like Pivot, that are in the tech space. Podcast is good for me. This kind of reminds me of like learning Photoshop on YouTube, and
Yeah.
just back in the day, where you're just like, how do you do this? It's like just go to YouTube. Someone will have it on there. But same thing, it's like a lot of people are publishing material on YouTube around AI tools or kind of at whatever level. VCs have some great series on YouTube, where they're talking just about the business landscape and where they see things going. So I agree with Elizabeth. It kind of depends on like what altitude you want to fly. But all those topics are definitely going out on Spotify, on YouTube, on
Yeah.
if you want to sort of formalize learning, and I think LinkedIn is good. I think one of the things that I want to do is start writing a little bit more about these tools and how to sort of develop maybe like a little stack as a designer in terms of being able to make something and build something.
Right.
Um, but I was just talking to a friend who's the CTO at a company and left that job and is building a product on his own with another engineer. And he was just walking me through that experience and what they've been using to build up that product. And I think those are great conversations to have that get you out of the design world too, because you're
Yeah.
learning from a technologist and how they're working and their workflow and what they're trying to do. And then you can, relate that back to, how you would plug in design into that. So I think if you have an opportunity to talk to a friend who's doing this type of coding or working in this way, just take that chance to just map out, these are the tools that they're using and one really interesting thing that he said, he's like, I'm not sure where this will go, but if anything, if I go back into a corporate role, I will be a better leader because he's just understanding the tools, and he's, Elizabeth always talks about this, like tactical empathy, right? It's like you get
Yeah.
in, use the tools, and so I think it's just very much a process of learning and there's outcomes that can come out of it that may be indirect or direct, but even just like learning to be a better leader is a really great outcome of some of this experimentation.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you have to balance getting your hands dirty, wet, whatever with this and realizing that it's going to change really quickly. Like, so you might
Yeah.
learn how to craft a prompt a certain way, and then, in a month, we may not need that at all, right? So I think it's that, again, that spirit of change and trying things and
Hmm.
realizing and not getting hung up on it. And obviously you could use Gen AI. You could say, craft a learning plan for me with, these
Yeah,
considerations. I have this amount of time. I'm at
Yeah.
this level. I don't know X. And tell me, debate with me. You could create an agent. Fine. You could design an agent who is your teacher on this, right? And you could say, I always want to know what's the latest critical thinking around X, right? Like debunk. You know what I mean? You can ask for
Yeah.
yeah,
critique on your learning plan and what you're learning too. So that might be a fun agent to build, a learning agent for this. So
Right. Yeah. I love the way you're thinking about that. A lot of it is, and what you're saying is, yes, go take some classes. But what you're both saying is use it, teach it. By the way, I'm a big advocate of that too. And Mario, you sort of said something similar, which is talk to some people and then, go use it, teach it, try
yeah,
it, right? Build something with it. And I think there's, again, techno optimists aside, that's how we as designers of all different flavors, right? That's how we learn anyways, which is try something, use it, struggle, uh,
mhm,
and then perhaps show someone else something, and then all of a sudden like, oh, okay, I know this thing now, and I can teach this thing now, and I can have this conversation, and I'm also adaptable because I know the history of this, at least from when I started. And so even when it changes, I'm like, oh, how did it change? Oh, got it. Okay. It used to work
right,
this way and now it works this way.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, Okay, I've kept you both a long time, just an hour now, and we're over time. How do people find you? And what do you want them to know? Where do you want them to go? And maybe, I'm just going to put it out there, when can they expect to be able to join a class or a workshop or something like that where you're teaching this amazing jobs to be done and agentic workflows stuff?
I think the easiest way is LinkedIn. We would love to
Okay.
we're going to definitely do this workshop again for the
Okay.
DMBA program. and we just need to
Mm-hmm.
figure that out. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're open. I'm open to all. That's the beauty of being semi-retired, is that you're just like,
Right.
I have time. So LinkedIn is the best for me. How about you, Mario?
Yeah, LinkedIn is good, and I think stay tuned on there for other opportunities where we'll be um, sharing this workshop and hopefully we'd love to see as many of you on at these workshops or classes, whether in person or however we decide is best. But yeah, LinkedIn is good for now.
Perfect. Well, I'm a huge fan of you both, and thank you again so much for spending the time with me here today. And I will definitely be in whatever your next workshop or class is. I don't care where it is, I'll be there. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thanks,
Justin.
Justin.
This was
All
lovely.
right. Cool.
So much fun.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Justin.
Thanks for listening to Design Shift. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really helps more designers like you find the show, and it helps me make better shows. And if you're not already subscribed to our awesome newsletter, head over to designshift.me. See you next time.